Good afternoon, students. In the last class, we discussed the law of agency, where there is the duties and rights of the principal and as well as the agent, also the liabilities with regard to the agent, and how such a contract is to be revoked or cancelled. That is the only pending part with regard to the law of agency that we will finish it today. So with that, we will complete the fourth module also. So before that, just have a look at the previous sessions, like what is a law of agency, who is an agent, who is a principal, and what are the essentials with regard to a law of agency. Then what is that, how an agency is to be created, isn't it? And also the duties excuse me, the duties and rights of the agent as well as the principal that we see in the previous classes. So today we will discuss with the how such a contract, agency contract, is to be revoked or cancelled. So termination of an agency, that is revocation or cancellation or termination. Termination means terminating the contract between agent and a principal, how it is to be. So we will check how. Section 201 to 210 deals with the various modes of termination of agency. So 201 to 210 is the section with regard to an agency is to be terminated. Under that, agency may be terminated either by the act of the parties or by the operation of law. So two things are there: by the act of the parties involved in the agency and also by operation of law. നിയമപ്രകാരം എന്ത് ചെയ്യുന്നു? റിവോക്ക് ചെയ്യുന്നു, അല്ലെ എന്തായാലും പറയുന്നത് ടെർമിനേറ്റ് ചെയ്യുന്നു, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ പാർട്ടീസിന്റെ പ്രവൃത്തി കൊണ്ട് ടെർമിനേഷൻ ആയി പോകും. So termination of an agency by the act of the parties, how it is to be. Agreement. In case of an agreement, an agency like any other contract can be terminated by mutual consent. So under the agreement part, mutual consent between both the parties. രണ്ടുപേർ ഏജന്റും പ്രിൻസിപ്പലും കൂടെ ഒന്നിച്ചിരുന്നുകൊണ്ട് നമുക്ക് ഈ കോൺട്രാക്ട് അവസാനിപ്പിക്കാം എന്ന് പറയുകയാണെങ്കിൽ it is a case of termination by the act of the parties under the agreement, based on the agreement between the parties. Then the second is revocation by the principal. അതായത് പ്രിൻസിപ്പലിന്റെ ഭാഗത്ത് നിന്ന് cancellation നടക്കുന്നു. So subject to few exceptions, the principal has got a right to terminate the authority of the agent by revocation. So he has cancelling the contract. So that is revocation by the principal. Some exceptional cases are there. The authority of the agent cannot be revoked in the following situation: where agent has exercised his authority, agentine തന്റേതായ പവർ ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ, അധികാരം ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ, and where he has partly exercised his authority. So agent has exercised his authority or partly exercised his authority. പകുതി തന്റെ അധികാരം പകുതി വിനിയോഗിക്കുകയോ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ മുഴുവനായിട്ട് വിനിയോഗിക്കുകയോ ഏജന്റ് ചെയ്താൽ പ്രിൻസിപ്പലിന് എന്ത് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റില്ല? Cannot be revoked unless all the other cases a principal has the right to revoke the contract itself. So by agreement, by revocation by the principal, and the third is by the revocation by the agent. So an agent can terminate the agency by expressly renouncing it. He has to give reasonable notice to the principal regarding such a revocation. So the third case is for revocation by the principal and by agent. Another proper notice to be given to the principal for such a revocation. So revocation by the act of the parties, under that agreement between the principal and the agent is there, so that they can by mutual consent revoke the contract or terminate the contract. That is the first case. Then agreement between both the parties mutually agreed upon. Second is revocation by the principal. Some special circumstances or some exceptional cases, it cannot be do so unless otherwise all the other cases an agreement can be revoked by the principal. An agreement can be revoked by the principal. Then third is, and some cases are there where this is not to be prevailed. Why? Because agent is exercising his authority fully or partially. In such a cases, principal cannot revoke that one. Other cases, all principal has the right to revoke the contract. And third is, by giving a proper notice to the principal, an agent also can revoke the contract. So that is by the act of the parties, by the agreement, by the revocation by the principal, and by the revocation by the agent. Next is termination of agency by operation of law. നിയമപ്രകാരം എങ്ങനെയാണ് terminate ചെയ്യുന്നത്, cancel ചെയ്യുന്നത്? So, performance of the contract. Contract in the performance. Agency comes to an end by performing what the agent has undertaken to do. എന്താണോ ഏജന്റ് ചെയ്യാൻ ഉദ്ദേശിച്ചിരുന്നത് അത് ഏജന്റ് ചെയ്ത് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ that contract will become revoked or cancelled or terminated because it is accomplished. For those purpose the agent is appointed, that is over, then what is the need of that this one agency? So it is automatically revoked. So by the performance of the contract. Another is expiry of time. സമയത്തിന്റെ സമയം അവസാനിക്കുന്നു. ഒരു നിശ്ചിത സമയത്തേക്കായിരിക്കും ആ ഏജൻസി ഇത് ചെയ്തിരിക്കുന്നത്. Within that particular time period, if it is accomplished, otherwise it is automatically revoked. Where the agency is for a fixed period, it terminates when that period lapses, even if the work undertaken is not completed. അത് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ കഴിഞ്ഞു, ഇല്ലേ ഇല്ല. പക്ഷേ up to a certain period only that agency is to be there. Till that period, it is there. Otherwise, within that particular period, if the work is completed or performance is over, it is over. Otherwise, that is pending, but the agency will not be there because only up to a expiry of a specified period. So that is expiry of the time. Then the third is death or insanity of an principal or an agent. Where the agent, when the agent or the principal dies or becomes of unsound mind, the agency is should be terminated. So when the agent or the principal dies, മരിക്കുകയോ സ്ഥിരബുദ്ധി ഇല്ലാതായി പോവുകയോ ചെയ്യുകയാണെങ്കിൽ, in such a case the agency is terminated. Then insolvent, principal becomes insolvent, the agency gets terminated. എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ എന്താ? Principal becomes insolvent, പാപ്പരായി പോവുകയാണെങ്കിൽ. Then destruction of the subject matter. എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ എന്താ? It is the subject matter that is for that purpose the contract is opened or performed or started. That subject matter itself gets destroyed. Then in such a case, contract will become, or the agency contract will become terminated or revoked. Then destruction of the subject matter. If a contract of agency is created to deal with a particular subject matter, it gets terminated when there is a destruction of that subject matter. For example, an agent appointed to sell a house ceases to have the authority if the house is destroyed by fire before the sale happens. ഒരു വീട് വിൽക്കുന്നതിന് ഏർപ്പെടുത്തിയിരിക്കുന്ന ഒരു കോൺട്രാക്ട് ആയിരുന്നു എന്ന് വെച്ചോ, ആ വീടേ കത്തിപ്പോയി. സോ പിന്നെ അതെന്താ എന്താ അവിടെ വിൽക്കാനുള്ളത്? സബ്ജക്ട് മാറ്റർ ഇറ്റ്സെൽഫ് ഈസ് ഡിസ്ട്രോയിഡ്. Then principal becoming an alien enemy. If the principal becoming an alien enemy of the agent, then the agency becomes invalid. അതായത് ശത്രുവാണ് ആയിട്ട് ഫൈനലി വരികയാണ്. In such a case, become terminated or revoked. Then dissolution of a company. If a company has the role of either a principal or an agent, agency gets terminated when it is dissolved. Company illadayi povukaanengil it gets dissolved, then agency automatically terminated. And termination of sub-agent's authority. When the authority of an agent is terminated, all the authority vested with the sub-agents appointed by the agent also will be revoked or ceases, stop to exist. So termination of sub-agents of authority. So these are the, as per the operation of law, an agency, a termination of an agency by operation also, performance of the contract, expiry of the time period, death or insolvency or unsound mind of a partner, of a principal or an agent, isn't it? Then death or insolvency, insanity and also insolvency. Then if the subject matter is itself is destroyed, then principal becoming an alien enemy of the agent, and also if the company started for such a purpose, that is automatically dissolved, it ceases to exist. The contract ceases to exist. And also, subagent's authority will also be terminated as the agent itself, agent's authority will be terminated, or agent's authority will be terminated. Then agents appointed subagent. So automatically subagent's authority will automatically be cease to exist. So these are the things by act of parties, where agreement between mutual consent of the principal and agent, revocation by the principal and revocation by the agent. By the operation of law, that is by the expiry of the term, expiry of time, by the performance of the contract, by the death or insanity or insolvency of the principal as well as the agent. If the subject matter itself is destroyed, then it ceases to exist. Then if the principal becoming an enemy of the agent, then if the company started for such a purpose is automatically dissolved, it ceases to exist, and the authority vested with the subagent is terminated, because if that agent's authority is ceased to exist, subagent is nothing there. So in such a case also this will be terminated. So this is the revocation of agency by act of parties and also by the operation of law. So in continuation with that, what is an irrevocable agency? It cannot be revoked by such an act, that is irrevocable agency. The principal has got the authority to terminate the agency whenever he so wishes. If the principal decided to terminate that agency with the agent, they can do so. The reason for this is obvious. Though the contract is entered into by the agent, finally it is going to be binding on the principal. Therefore, only if the principal is satisfied with the performance of the agent, the agency may be continued. With the performance of the agent, the principal is satisfied, then only that agency will be continued. However, there are few exceptional situations where the agency cannot be unilaterally terminated by the principal. So, some situations of the principal, or some situations where agency cannot be terminated by the principal, these are as follows. Where the agency is coupled with the interest. So, when the agency is coupled with the interest. Sometimes an agent may have some interest over the subject matter on which the agency is created. അതായത് ചില കേസിൽ an agent may have some interest, താല്പര്യമുണ്ടായിരിക്കും. Okay, അത് നടപ്പിലാക്കണമെന്ന് താല്പര്യമുണ്ടായിരിക്കും ചില ഏജൻസി on which the agency is created. In such situations, authority of the agent cannot be terminated by the principal unless there is a contract to the contrary. So, agent's authority cannot be terminated by the principal because the agent is having an interest to do so with regard to the subject matter involved. That is, then Section 202. In such a case, agency is irrevocable during the subsistence of such interest. Because of the interest that agency is continuing. Interest of whom? The agent upon the subject matter of that contract. So, an agency is said to be coupled with interest when it is created for the purpose of securing some benefit to the agent. Subject matter like interest they need to get, the agent need to get some benefit out of that. That's the main content. Then, in such cases, even the death, insanity, or insolvency of the principal cannot affect the irrevocability of the agency. So, that is the case. Even though in the previous cases we see by the operation of law, by the death, insanity, or insolvency of a principal or an agent, it gets revoked. But in this case, if the agent is having an interest on the subject matter to conduct of that thing and getting some benefit out of that, then in such a case, the agency is called as irrevocable agency, because the principal cannot be terminated by at the time of death or insanity or insolvency of a principal. It did not be revoked. That is why it is an irrevocable agency. For example, P owes some money to A. So, P is owing some money to A. P gives the authority to A to sell P gives the authority to sell P's land and to take out the proceeds, the debt due to A from P. P cannot revoke this authority as This agency is not terminated even by the peace, insanity, or death. അപ്പൊ ഇവിടെ പറഞ്ഞ എന്താന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ അതിന്റെ താല്പര്യം ഉണ്ട് അയാൾക്ക് അത് നടപ്പിലാക്കുന്നതിന്. സോ പി ഓഫ് സം മണി ടു എ. പി എക്ക് കുറച്ച് പണം കൊടുക്കാനുണ്ടായിരുന്നു. പി എന്ത് ചെയ്തു? പി gives the authority to A to sell P's house. പിയുടെ സ്ഥലം വീട് വിൽക്കുന്നതിന് is giving authority to A out and take out of the proceeds the debt due to A from P. P cannot revoke this authority. അത് ക്യാൻസൽ ചെയ്തില്ല. കാര്യം എന്താണ്? P is having some interest to sell that product or sell that house, isn't it? So thereby agency is not terminated even by the P's insanity or death. P മരിച്ചു പോവുകയോ ഇൻസൈൻ ആവുകയോ ഇൻസോൾവെന്റ് ആവുകയോ ഒക്കെ ചെയ്തോട്ടെ, പക്ഷേ agency cannot be terminated because the agent is having some interest on the subject matter that is involved in that matter. So in such a case it cannot be terminated and or revoked, so that such a case agency will be an irrevocable one. Means cannot be revoked, cannot be terminated or cannot be cancelled. Then where the agent has incurred a personal liability, അതായത് ഏജന്റിന് where the agent has incurred a personal liability. If the agent has incurred a personal liability under the agency, അതായത് ഒരു പേഴ്സണൽ ബാധ്യതയുണ്ട് തേർഡ് പാർട്ടി ആയിട്ട് ഏജന്റിനെങ്കിൽ, in such a case principal cannot revoke the agency unless otherwise finishing that liability by the agent. അത് തീർന്നതിന് ശേഷമേ ക്യാൻസൽ ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റുള്ളൂ. അതാണ്. So where the agent has incurred a personal liability. So in such a case the agency cannot be revoked by the principal because the agent is having incurred some personal liability to the third party. Then third is where the agent has partly exercised his authority. Authority and the agent is exercising partly authority. മുഴുവനായിട്ടില്ല, പകുതി അധികാരം അവിടെ ഇൻവോൾവ് ചെയ്യുകയാണെങ്കിൽ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ അവിടെ പ്രഷർ ചെയ്ത് അത് നടത്തിക്കുകയാണെങ്കിൽ principal has not right to revoke that contract or revoke that agency. The principal cannot revoke the authority given to his agent after the authority has been partly exercised so far as regards such acts and obligation as arise from the acts already done in the agency. So if the agent is partly authorizing his authority or partly exercising his authority, in such a case principal cannot be revoked that contract of agency. So there are three cases. If the agent is having some interest in the subject matter of the contract in order to get some benefit out of them, in such a case principal cannot be revoked that contract. Second is where the agent is has incurred any personal liability to any of the person involved, then in such a case also it cannot be revoked. And third is where the agent is exercising partly exercising the authority vested with him, then in such a case also it cannot be revoked. All these cases, such agencies are called irrevocable agency, means cannot be cancelled. അപ്പൊ അതാണ് irrevocable, means cannot be terminated or cancelled. അപ്പൊ revocable, it can be terminated by the act of the parties with the agreement between mutual consent, with the revocation by the principal, with the revocation by the agent. While there should be some operation of law under the revocation due to the operation of law by the performance of the contract or performance of the agency, by expiry of the time period, then by the death, insanity or insolvency of the agent or the principal, or if the subject matter is getting destroyed, if the company for that purpose is started, that is dissolved, then in such a case, what happened? This occurred, or revocation occurred. And one more point, if the subagent's authority is terminated, and one more thing, principal becoming an enemy of the agent. അങ്ങേയറ്റ ശത്രുതാ മനോഭാവത്തോടു കൂടിയാണ് ഏജന്റ് പ്രിൻസിപ്പലിനോട് പെരുമാറുന്നതെങ്കിൽ the principal can terminate the contract or agency. And also termination of the sub-agent's authority as the agent itself ceases to exist. So With this, we are going to conclude the fourth module, law of agency, where we see what is an agent, what is a principal, what are the essentials of an agency, law of agency or contract of agency, then who is an agent, who is a principal, what are the duties, rights, and of the principal as well as the agent, how an agency is to be created, what are the personal liability with regard to the agent, and finally, revocable as well as irrevocable agencies. So please have a look at today's class and please go through the entire portion till this much taught, and also please see the video after uploading and please confirm. So I'm going to wind up the session. Thank you for today.